Have you ever wondered what really goes into creating a relationship that is filled with trust, intimacy, and love? We did. So we started having conversations that took us deeper into our own relationship. Then we decided to record those vulnerable conversations to share with others. Now we are excited to have you join us as we bring those conversations to you weekly.
I'm Sonia, a boudoir photographer and relationship coach who believes that everybody is worthy to love themselves and be loved in their relationship.
I'm Carolyn, a transformational life coach on a mission to support others to let go of trauma, beliefs, and negative body image so that they can become the amazing humans they were born to be.
Are you ready to connect more deeply, to create deeper intimacy, and get truly curious about what is possible in your relationship? If so, let's get started now.
We are now recording live. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome back to Sonia and Carolyn. She's Sonia, and that is Carolyn. So, what are we doing? Okay.
We're podcasting,
Okay.
talking about shit.
Talking about shit. We're talking about bridging the distance between you and your partner. Get closer. There you go. So if you feel like you and your partner are dealing with a distance issue, distance in your intimacy, distance in the way that you communicate, the distance in trusting one another, growing together, or growing apart. This little series has been covering some things that you can do to help you and your person kind of bridge that gap. So for Sonia and I, no surprise, we're still talking about intimacy. You know when the intimacy is 100% where it's supposed to be, when it's not part of the conversation. Right? But we have talked about being honest. We have talked about fears. Yes. And today we're going to talk about what?
Listening.
There you go. Listening. So that we can bring these pieces together to get to the next episode, which is going to be, what do you and your partner really want? So today it's all about listening. So as I used to say as a preschool teacher, do you have your listening ears on? Are they turned up all the way? Okay, now let's be adults. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Ready to go?
Yes.
Good. So Sonia,
Yes.
what's the most important thing to you when you're in a conversation with me that tells you that I'm really hearing you?
Eye contact.
True. Eye contact is really important. Why is eye contact so important for you?
Well, one, you obviously have their undivided attention for the most part, because you can still have eye contact and be somewhere else. But you can, when we're talking and I'm looking at you or you're looking at me, eyes tell a lot. So you're either looking at me or you're like gazing in the stars somewhere, or maybe you're rolling your eyes or something. But it's like they say, it's the window to your soul. Right. So I can see through your eyes whether or not you're listening intently or just, again, like I said, out there in la la land.
Right. So listening is so important, especially when we're trying to bridge the gap. But I think that the most important part of listening, besides the language that we bring to our listening, which is our body language, our facial expressions, our eye contact, touching, sharing emotions through your facial expressions, is also hearing in the present moment. Get it?
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So, what I mean by hearing in the present moment is this: so many of us in relationships, we've been together for really long periods of time. Um, for Sonia and I, it's 20 years plus years. And so sometimes we find ourselves listening to one another from the place of 10 years ago.
10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Yes, even 6 months ago. Um, and when we do that, we're really not listening to what our partner is saying to us
at that moment.
Right.
Presently.
Right. We're listening from the place of, I already know what she's going to say. I've heard this 100 times before. I don't want to hear it again. It's like she's lecturing me. All of these things are going through our head, but we're really not hearing our person when we're listening from that context.
Right. Because you can be, I don't know, for example, wanting to order something. It's like, oh, I'll get that. She always gets that. And then you bring this back to them. And it's like, oh, okay, but I wanted to try that. So again, like taking for granted what you're used to versus like being in the present.
Exactly. It's so important that we bring our ears into the present moment and listen from the perspective of, who is your person now? What are they trying to convey to you? And really hear them, because they may not be saying the same thing again.
Yeah.
But you're still hearing the same thing.
Right. Exactly.
So if we
tune in and look for those little signs of maybe wanting to grow or reach out, or just grow, those little hints, which can ultimately create a better environment, right, for growth. It's like, wait a minute. Hey, do you want some of that whatever? It's like, no, I want this. Oh, okay. So then now you know for sure. It's like to keep asking instead of assuming and remember things from back when.
Right. So the other thing that happens is when we're listening to our partner, we may not be hearing what they're saying. We may be hearing our own conversation going on, which is why it's so important to be so very present. Eye contact, turn towards that person, have your hand on them. And if you don't understand something, ask them. It's like, can you elaborate on what that means so that I can better understand what it is that you're trying to tell me? Clarify things. Because those things let your partner know, oh, I'm seen, I'm heard, and what I have to say is of value to our relationship. So let me really tune into you, and in turn really tune into the other person. So when we're doing this, we need to give them space to talk, so you're really listening. Sometimes what we do is we're listening, but we're trying to figure out, what are we going to say? Do we need to defend ourselves? Do we need to justify something? Do we need to, I don't know, come up with a solution for them? But in these cases where we're really trying to bridge that gap between each other, we need to just stop and listen.
Right. And with that, I'm going to add, it's like when you're talking and having a conversation, give your partner some time to respond. Don't talk for like 20 minutes straight, because you're going to lose that person.
Exactly.
And then if you do have any thoughts that you wanted to bring up because of what your partner is saying, then you'll know that, one, you don't have to keep thinking, okay, let me remember to ask this when I get a chance to talk. Right? So you're not worrying about that. You'll know that in a few minutes, if not less, you're going to be able to ask that question.
Right.
Right. So you have to give each other time to break. Like us, like when we first started, right, I was like a hogger. I was hogging up talk time, right? And then it wasn't until Lulu says, yeah, I like what you girls are doing, but you need to give your wife some time to talk too, because you're just like motor mouth over there. I'm like, okay, so I worked on that.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Um, so, and that's clearly a good point about giving time and space, because not only do you need time and space to say what you need to say, but your listener needs time and space to process it, and then um, think about it for a second. You know, quiet space doesn't have to be filled up. It needs to be given so that you have the time to go, okay, so I hear what you're saying, um, but I have a question. Or, bring your own feelings to the table. And when we're talking in the present, we're like literally talking in the present. Um, we're not bringing up past fights. We're not bringing up past issues, because remember, those things are in the past. If they're
Can't change them.
right, you can't change them. If they're still showing up today, bring them up. Bring them up in that conversation from the perspective of where they're coming in today, not where they came in 15 years ago, not where they came in 6 months ago, but where they're coming in today, because we're keeping the conversation present to this moment in time in your relationship, where you're hearing what your partner is trying to convey to you, and give them a chance to convey it. I do this. um I know what Sonia is going to, I know the question that Sonia is getting ready to ask me, so I'll stop her like halfway through. No, thank you. Instead, and
Wow.
she's like, well, how do you even know? Because you were going to ask me if I wanted a candy bar, or if I wanted a piece of fruit, because like I put all the clues together. You were over by the fruit. You were grabbing an apple for yourself.
So you assume a lot in that
I
area.
I do.
And it's kind of like a like whatever. Most of the time I don't even want to ask.
Right. So we need to stop ourselves from assuming that we know. We're not in our partner's brains. We don't really know what they're getting ready to ask. Sonia might have been getting ready to ask me if I wanted to go take the dogs to the park, and I assumed that she wanted to know if I wanted a piece of fruit. Um, and I said no, and now we're not going to the park because now she's not going to ask the full question. Um, we have to give our partners the time to speak what's really going on. We've talked about being honest, so we need to give the space and hear what our partners are saying in that space where they're being honest with us. When they're talking about their fears in this situation, we need to give them that space to verbalize what it is that they're fearful of, or what is the issue, so that they have the space and your understanding from this perspective, not another perspective. Listening is
It's a skill.
it's yeah, it's a skill. There are things that we need to do as the listener to make sure that we're hearing what the other person is saying, and asking clarifying questions to make sure that you know and understand what it is that they're saying. Or if they said something and it seems kind of vague to you, or it's kind of blanketed, then ask a question, because when we don't have all of the information, we cannot build that bridge.
Right. And with that, when you're asking, don't demand. Okay. Just ask. And for the person who's being asked, don't feel compelled to have to answer right away.
Mm-hmm.
But then, and I do this sometimes, but try not to stay silent. At least acknowledge, yeah, I understand what you're asking, but I need to process that because I don't know. It's like scrambled right now. I don't really know, or I can't put a label to the feelings that I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And feelings are hard to title, tag, and sort, and to even acknowledge that they're even happening. right? So yeah, so don't feel pressured. Just at least acknowledge, say, I need to think about that. So let's move on to something else.
Right. All of these things that we've been talking about are leading you in a direction of bridging the distance that's going on between you, whether it's in conversation, whether it's communicating, whether it's parenting, whether it's your intimacy, whatever it is for you, these pieces will help you to get closer. Because when we're seen and heard in our relationship, when we're given the space that we need to feel safe, then we get into this space where we want to do the same thing for our partners. And all of us know, um, whether we're in relationships now or have been in relationships, that everybody in the relationship matters. No one is more than or less than in that relationship. Everybody is equal to. So Sonia and I are equal to each other. And I want to give her the space that she needs to say what she needs to say. And I need to be given the same thing. When she's talking, I want to listen to what she's saying. Um, and something else that we tend to do is when we think that we're not being heard, our voice tends to go up. But here's a little something. Sometimes our voice doesn't need to go up, it needs to come down. Because when our voice is down lower, somebody has to really listen.
To lean in, like what'd you
Right.
say?
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
instead of trying to be the loudest voice in the room, just try to bring your voice down to a decent level and bring that conversation into an intimate location and talk, hear each other.
Yeah. So I mean, the whole reason for communicating is, well, number one, you have something to say,
Mhm.
right? So we're communicating that. And the other important thing is to make sure that the person that you're communicating this important thing to is receiving what you're saying,
Mhm.
or commenting or not acknowledging, whatever the communication is, whatever the message is, it's your responsibility to make sure that the person is receiving it the
Mhm.
way you want it received, the way you're conveying that, right? And then what's the result of that? What is the final, okay, that person heard me, is the feedback.
Yes.
So it's like, it's really three components: the message, the receiver, and then the feedback. That's it. So if you can get those three things down and take your time,
Mhm.
pay attention to what it is that you want to say, be concise, be uh, to the point. That way you can get that message across. It can get processed in the simplest form. And then that person can process that, receive it, and then give you feedback, right? But like if you're talking, you're rambling on, and you just like don't know, number one, what it is that you're trying to convey, then that receiver is going to have the same confusing message, and the feedback is just going to be either nothing or just misconstrued, or assumptions are going to be made. It's just not a good way to communicate.
Right. I used to not be really clear, and sometimes I'm still that way, not really clear as to what I'm trying to say. Um, so I'll say this in the beginning of it. I'm going to be all over the place for a couple of minutes, but don't worry, I'm going to come back to it. I need to say all of this other stuff to get to where I'm trying to go. That lets Sonia know that
It's going to be a minute.
it's going to be a minute, because Sonia is a just facts, ma'am, just facts, and I'm not. I like stories. I tell stories. It's like what I feel came through all of these other situations. So sometimes, and for me, it's really important to be able to talk it out. Sometimes I have to talk it out in order to, and it's very emotional for me because it's like, I have to do this. So in all of the times where Sonia has come to me and said, can you just
give me an answer.
get to the point. And it's like, I can't. I have to get to the point through, where it is, how I got there. And that just shows that in relationships, we all have different styles.
Yeah.
And it's okay that we all have different styles. But when we're having important conversations, it may be the place where you might want to have already gone through this conversation in your own head so that you know what it is that you're trying to say. Stand in front of the mirror, record it on your phone, whatever it is that you're trying to do. We've all rehearsed conversations, and that is okay to do. It's okay to rehearse this conversation because it's important. It's important to know I'm coming to you and I'm talking to you about our intimacy, and there are certain things that I need you to hear about it. These are the important things for me. That way Sonia knows, okay, well, there's 3 important things that she wants to share with me. So I need to hear those 3 things. What were they? They were this, and this. Clarify that. Did I hear that? Yes. And then that gives her a place to, okay, so can I have like 5 minutes to think about this? Absolutely. We want to give space. We want to hear what our partner is saying. We want to give them the space to respond. But we don't want to give them like so much space that it's like, okay, so
it's been 2 weeks
yeah,
now.
it's been
Do you have an answer for me?
Right? It's like, that's like too much time. Like yesterday, we were coming back we went to this really cool place yesterday. Well, here in Texas, they just opened up a Cigar International. And my wife loves cigars. Loves cigars.
I know. I have like one waiting for me right now.
Right. And so we went there, and the conversation was really, really good between us yesterday. We were talking, we were, clarifying some things, and she had said a couple of things. And on the way home, I was like, okay, I need to ask a question about this. And I asked the question, and I didn't hear anything from her like for like miles. And I was like, okay, so she's not going to answer this question. And then all of a sudden,
I did exactly what I said,
right,
not to do. At least acknowledge,
right. So I didn't
we're
bring
not perfect.
I didn't bring that up for that point. But I brought it up for this point. Sometimes we ask something, and you really have to dive deep inside of yourself to figure it out. Especially the question that I asked yesterday. I mean, it needed to have time. It needed to be thought about. And inside of my own head, I was going, okay, that was too far. I shouldn't have asked that question. I was making all of these judgments about the question that I asked, instead of just going, it was important to me to ask this question. Take the space, take the time, and come back. But don't take too much space. And it's true. Acknowledge that you heard what was asked. Take your time with it. But if you're taking more than, I don't know, 2 hours to come back with an answer, or you're taking weeks to come back with an answer, there's something about that situation, and maybe the conversation needs to be, like a sit down conversation. But at least acknowledge and say, can I take like 5 minutes to think about this? I need 20 miles to process it,
Right,
whatever it is, so that your person, me, who is on the receiving end, knows, okay, I hear your question. Give me a minute. That way, at least we've acknowledged it for them. And then
yeah. It's not even asking for permission to think about it. Like I'm listening to you, and you're saying, well, can I have 5 minutes? It's like,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
yeah.
Asking
So don't,
permission.
you're not
asking
asking permission. It's like, you know what, that's pretty deep. I need, or I'm going to, or you know what, I'll get back to you in about an hour, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, But here's the thing that I kind of like lost touch with, and this realization came yesterday, is that remember, as a as someone who wants the other person to listen, you have to put yourself in their shoes too, right? So if you want to be heard, then you need to give the same courtesy to that person and allow them and hear them as well, right? Because like you were saying, our volumes go up and up and up because I'm not hearing you, you're not hearing me. And it's not that we can't hear each other because the volume is high. We clearly hear each other yelling, but we're not hearing, we're not respecting or giving each other the courtesy that we're both fighting for, right? So we're like horn to horn, locking heads. And so it's like they say, um, treat others the way you want to be treated, right? So treat me in the way that I want to be treated by, like listening to me, and I would treat you the same way as you want to be treated, and that's by me listening to you, right? I want the same. Right? I want the time to speak. I want the same amount of time to listen, and vice versa. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So,
I know exactly what you're saying.
right.
And I appreciate that very much.
Right. Because, it's like, oh, okay, I'm not being fair. Just me, what I want, and fighting for what I want, and not taking in consideration what it is that you're fighting. You're fighting for the same damn thing, what it is that you want, right? But I wasn't seeing that. I wasn't hearing it. And I I don't know, I haven't seen that in a while. Because usually now, excuse me, I have a mosquito bite. Usually now we're pretty good about giving each other the time that we need to hear each other, to listen, and to answer whatever questions that we pose to each other.
Right.
Right. So just, if you have to walk away, calm down, but say so. It's like, you know what? Like, I need to remove myself from this, and then, but come back and talk about it. Don't try to use that, get out of the house and take off and try to cool off. That's fine, but do it in a healthy way, I guess would be a good way to say that. Like a little more calmly, because we've all done this. We get into an argument, no one's listening, no one's getting our way, we're fighting and fighting and fighting, and our egos and pride get in the way, and then we grab the keys and we take off.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like we come back, and then it's like avoiding and all that stuff. It can get ugly.
Yeah.
And then there's like no communication. Right. And then how do you come back from that? Eventually you do. We've come back from it many times. It's possible to come back from it, but it leaves scars. But eventually, scar tissue goes away. And then we just, like Kellen, like you said earlier, you just leave that shit alone. Mm-hmm. You don't bring up the past. You don't. And valid comment that you said too is like, if it keeps coming up, then yeah, you need to get rid of that festering issue.
Right.
Not like, oh, I'll never forgive you, you cheated on me. It's deeper than that. It's like, hey, you know what? I'm just having these feelings that I can't trust you. So what can you do to help me trust you again?
Right.
That's what you need to talk about.
Yes, that's what you need to talk about. And that's perfectly said. It's perfectly said, because um, you already know what the situation is. You know what's happened in your relationship. Now, what you're doing is you're asking your person, it's like, I want us to stay I want us to stay together. I want us to have better intimacy, better communication, whatever it is. How can, what can you do to bring that as well? So you're asking them to bring back something, like in that situation, trust, like what you were talking about.
Mhm.
In our situation, we're asking to bring back our intimacy. What can you bring to bring our intimacy back? And what can I bring to bring that back? Because right there, I look at it this way. I love the idea of a bridge. Bridges are a beautiful way to get from one side of something to the other side of something. And at that point, now we've set down on each of us have set something down, um, being honest in the relationship and what's happening, talking about our fears. Now we're getting closer and closer together. Now we're talking about listening and hearing each other. And now we're at that beautiful place where you can cross over from one side to the other, because you've done the work to get to this place where you care about this person. I care about Sonia so much. And before I go any further, I just want to say thank you. I want
I
to
love you too.
I want to say thank you, because it really meant a lot to me what you said about hearing each other. So I just have to acknowledge that. um, but when we do these things, what we're doing is we're really getting closer together. We're getting to a place where we're getting closer to making what it is that we want to have happen in our relationship happen. And that's the most important point. We're not listening, when we're not being honest, when we're holding our fears in, we're pulling that bridge apart. Nobody is going to get any closer in those situations, because we're not communicating. And if you want something in your relationship, you have to do the work to get there. And it won't happen
Exactly.
overnight. Give the time.
Yeah.
Give the space it needs.
Right. There's long bridges,
Right? I want to build a
suspending
short bridge.
bridges, short bridges, bridges that, it's like, wow, that was a bridge, like a little hiccup of a bridge, there's different, we all have different bridges, but it's all the same concept though,
Mhm.
right? It's like you're saying, like, regardless of how big or long, how long or short the bridge is, it's being honest. It's like, and being vulnerable
Yes.
by allowing your partner to know what your fears are,
Mhm.
and to still move forward whether you feel fearful of or not, you know. And with that, I guess the best thing to say is don't have assumptions when you're dealing with that fear. It's like, oh man, she's gonna say no, or he's gonna think I'm an idiot, or you know. So assumptions are, man, they can be the devil.
Right? They can be a stopping point.
Yeah, it's like, so there you go again, thinking for that person, and
Right.
we're not mind readers, we don't know, and if we keep assuming, then indirectly, really, you're not helping your partner grow,
Mhm.
because then it's just like the same thing over and over again. Let that person surprise you, you know. Yeah, okay, let's go skydiving. What?
Okay.
Okay, you know.
Mm.
So you're creating a nice environment to grow, and you're letting your person know that it's okay to have different ideas and different goals and dreams, and just to be a little spontaneous, instead of assuming, she's not gonna go skydiving. So why even take on an invitation from friends who decide they want to go skydiving just because,
Right.
So anyway, and then so don't assume, deal with the fear, and just if you don't ask, the answer will always be no.
Right.
Always. Right. And then now today, we're talking about listening. Definitely. We have to give each other the respect and the courtesy and the same time to each other to listen. And then the most important thing about that is when we're listening, we get information, and with that information, we can come up with solutions. And that's where we are today.
Right. Perfect. The only other thing that I feel like I would like to add to this part is creating the right space to be together, to hear one another. When you're at the kids, football game or whatever, that may not be the best time or space to have that conversation. Give yourselves the give yourself
Flies.
there's a fly on the window. It's outside, not inside. Give yourselves the time and the space that you need to have that conversation. Go someplace, sit down together, have a cup of coffee together, whatever it is, but create the space so that you can be heard and they can be heard. And it's okay to let other people in the house know, like the kids. It's like, hey guys, would you like to watch a cartoon for an hour? I know it's the middle of the afternoon, but we need to have a conversation. Let them know. Set a boundary so that you can make that time to have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Make the time important enough and show up at the time that you say that you're going to show up for that conversation, because all of these things are important to building that strong relationship.
Exactly. Definitely show up if one of the issues is trust, or accountability or something like that. Yeah, that would not be a good thing. Yeah, definitely. That's a good point, is to, get rid of all distractions and be there for that conversation. Yep.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, we actually have an episode on listening, which goes deeper into that,
Mhm.
Knowing your person and the right time to do that, and getting rid of distractions. Yeah, it's perfect.
All right. So do you have anything else that you want to add?
No, I think we covered everything.
Good.
For now.
Right. So here's the last part of this. The last part of this is right here. We're having conversations. We're talking about bridging gaps. We're talking about getting into communication with our person, because the person that we're sharing our life with is important to us. So if you and your person need support, let us know. That's what we're here for. Get into one conversation with us and see if we are the couple that maybe can support you and your person to get to a better space.
I'm confident that we are.
I'm pretty confident that we are too. But I want to give you the opportunity to make that decision for yourself. So reach out to us. We're going to put all of our contact information in either the introduction to the podcast or in the YouTube notes below. So until next time.
Take an ear. Well, don't take your ear. Take a listen. Be honest.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes. Love your person. Love yourself, and just bridge that gap.
Yes, definitely. All right. That's all for now. Bye.
We're curious. What are your top 3 non-negotiables that are a must for your relationship? For us, it's love, safety, and belonging. With that being said, what conversations will you start having to learn more about your relationship?
For more information, check out our website, soniaandcarolyn.com. Our social media links are listed there for you. Let us know what inspired you in this episode. Until our next conversation, keep exploring your relationship.